And so yet another installment into the hidden history of the African-American fighting man. You know, ladies and gentlemen, over the weekend, of course, we had Veterans Day, and it became more than evident that even now, even within the 21st century, ladies and gentlemen, we are still hiding the sacrifices of the African-American fighting man. I took time over Saturday and Sunday just simply to watch all of the military shows. South Pacific, Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, Pearl Harbor, all the shows that have been put together. Iwo Jima, Letters of Iwo Jima, or Letters of My Father, or something like that.
Flags of My Father.
Yeah, whichever. I watched all of them. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, I found very few, if any, African Americans depicted in uniform during World War II. Now, I know this isn't historical, but it's no less accurate. When you look at shows like this, even in today's society, shows that's been produced within the last 10, 15 years, and you don't see African Americans in uniform when there were 2 million African Americans who were in uniform during World War II, then it begs the question, why? It doesn't mean that they have to be leading men. It doesn't mean that they have to be in the Band of Brothers, because it still was a segregated military. But you don't even see them on base? When it came to South Pacific, the only African Americans you saw were, well, stateside as butlers or maids. Band of Brothers, nada, none. Saving Private Ryan, there was one African American, Van Diesel, but he played an Italian, who was killed, by the way. Pearl Harbor, Cuba Gooding Jr., and one other African American, but Cuba Gooding, was the only African American that had a part. Now, when young boys, men, look at this, particularly be it neo-Nazis or be it African Americans who are growing up in a household without an African American male in it, it gives the impression that somehow or another this war thing is a white thing, end quotes. It makes a neo-Nazi go, well, you know what? We're the ones, we fought for your freedom. Really? You guys can't fight all the time while heavyweight champion Joe Louis was knocking white boys out, end quotes. It perpetuates that, is my point. And it's irritating. First African American I saw in uniform was Jim Brown, Dirty Dozen. He was a criminal. Was it Lee Marvin, I think, got him out of jail, him and 11 others, and their task was to go on this suicide mission. And they did. I think he was killed, too. I think they all were killed except for Lee Marvin. So the hidden history of the African-American fighting man is still, to date, being hidden, with the exception of this show. When I share with you what I share with you, it isn't revisionist history, ladies and gentlemen. It's very real. It's very real. I actually, my staff go through great pains to come up with actually what the War Department said, Department of Archives, to show exactly what happened with African Americans' participation going back to the Revolutionary War and to this day. To this day, ladies and gentlemen, you have producers and directors who are afraid to show African Americans in uniform fighting for this country. To this day. To the point whereby even the African American Marine who was there at 9/11 in uniform was depicted in a movie thereafter as being a Caucasian. It's by design. It's by design. And it's about time for good God-fearing Americans to own up to it, because what it's doing is it's giving, it's creating an environment whereby there are those who think that my rights belong to them because they fought for it and my granddaddy and yours truly did not. You can bet I fight for mine now. I don't have to be in no uniform. I do it every day. And so you watch these movies, you need to have an asterisk by them to explain to your children that that's not accurate. There were those who questioned Pearl Harbor, for instance, said it was inaccuracies, and it was, regarding the aircraft being used and the like. There's no doubt. First movie series I saw, they used to have a series called The Gallant Men.
Any brothers?
No.
None?
None. No brothers.
Well, if they don't do it now, I guess we shouldn't expect it to do it.
The other series I saw was called The Rat Patrol. They had these had the African American troops there in northern Africa, and they had these 50 calibers or 30 calibers mounted on the back of jeeps, and they had one African American in there. If this is Africa, you got to understand. was one African American in that entire series called The Rat Patrol. I enjoyed it too, by the way. So there you have it. The hidden history is still being hidden. If you don't question it, or you don't challenge it. I mean, Clint Eastwood just got upset with Spike Lee because Spike Lee called him out on not having any African Americans there with letters to my fathers. What difference does it make? It makes a lot of difference.
Huge difference.
If you're going to depict the United States military going back to George Washington, you need to do it accurately. It was a multicultural force, and it had to be. Had to be, ladies and gentlemen, else we would not have won. Period. End of story. Let me get Stu in, because I know Stu is a student of this and a modeler in his own right. Stu, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Rip. What I was telling your crew and stuff is that I had an opportunity to buy a black G.I. Joe tanker doll, but at the time I didn't know any tankers existed as black people, so I passed it up and stuff and whatnot. And then another time when G.I. Joe brought out the Marine Corps doll with the dress uniform and stuff,
right,
they made no African American dolls in the Marine Corps dress uniforms and stuff. I looked all over the place and I couldn't find one and stuff and whatnot. I looked at the BX, Walmart, and all the places. All they had was white.
In the dress blues? Oh, you're talking about the dress blues?
Yeah, the Marine Corps dress blues. So
Did you go online?
It's not that I didn't want one and stuff, but I never picked one up because I wanted one, African American one,
right,
you know?
Right. So did you go online with Amazon to check and see if they have it?
No, they don't have.
So they just didn't make
go online and stuff. I'm gonna be honest and stuff and whatnot. But like I said, all the ones I saw at the BX and at the BX and Walmart in the local area were all white and stuff.
So let me ask you, Stu. So now you're a modeler. You've been at this for a while, and of course you are a former veteran. So the African American tanker that you passed up, you were unaware of the 761st Tank Battalion?
Oh yeah. When I was a kid, all my model, when I built models and stuff, all my pilots and stuff were white. I never heard about the Tuskegee Airmen until probably right before the movie actually came out. I went to there was one company named Testers that put out, well, there was two, I'm not going to lie. But Testers was the first one to put out they put out a P-47 with Tuskegee Airmen markings and stuff, and that was right before the movie came out. Then after the movie came out, Monogram came out with one P-51 with Tuskegee Airmen markings, but that didn't stay very long and stuff. Now, there are kits now that had some Tuskegee Airmen marking with them lately and stuff and whatnot. But like I said, it wasn't until recently that you could build, a Tuskegee Airmen model and stuff.
Yeah. All right, Stu, appreciate your calling, appreciate what you do. And your exhibits are still on display?
Yeah, it's over at, like I said, right now, G.I. Joe's are over at Ocean Springs Library right now.
Very good. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for my P-52, Stu.
Good man there. You know why they call a tank a tank? You know, they call a tank. The United States military decided to call a tank because they were shipping the tanks clandestinely in water tank boxes. And so I thought it was something to be very glorious, but that's why they call them a tank.
Subterfuge.
Yeah, in other words, when the tanks first began, actually they thought that they were not going to be nearly as useful as what the military made them, going back to World War I. Clunkers they were, but they would ship them out in water tank boxes, and so therefore they became tanks. All right, I got grave concerns here, folks. Very grave concerns about my country and where we're going to be. Speaking of the military, there's an article, front page here, and it should be on every newspaper. Coming down from the Associated Press, it's front page here of USA Today, I can tell you that. Army eases mental health rules. Waivers considered for history of depression and drugs and the like. You got to understand what I'm about to say here and understand why I'm about to say it, particularly if you have a child who is 14, 15, 16, coming up on 18. The decision to open Army recruiting to those with mental health conditions comes as the services faces the challenging goal of recruiting 80,000 new soldiers through September 2018. To meet last year's goal of 69,000, the Army accepted more recruits who fared poorly on aptitude tests, increased the number of waivers granted for marijuana use, and ordered hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. Now, what is this telling you? Our all-volunteer Army is not getting nearly the volunteers it needs to get. Now, look, you don't have to read the tea leaves to know what this is about. When the Army starts saying that they will consider bipolar, and that's what it says, bipolar soldiers that have had disorder, depression disorder, drugs and alcohol, they are now, because of the fact that they can get the medical records, they are now lowering their standards and recruiting some of those people. Now, folks, I don't have anything against the people. But when you look at the number of suicides in the United States military, you got to ask, what are they thinking? I can tell you what they're thinking. They're desperate. You know, it was in 2009 that there was an epidemic of suicides among troops. And that's what made the United States military raise the standards. Well, now they're talking about lowering the standards because we are not getting enough recruits, enough volunteers to volunteer. Quoting now, the decision was primarily due to the increased availability of medical records and other data, which is now more readily available, says this guy Taylor with the United States military. These records allow Army officials to better document applicant medical histories. Yeah, right. Sure. You're doing this because you are not getting the volunteers, folks. I've been here before. Back during the Vietnam conflict, there was a such thing as 4F. Some of you who are around then know what I'm talking about. You 4F or you get a student deferment. Little by little, let me just tell you, it didn't matter whether you could spell it. The Army was taking you in. You were being drafted. Getting deferments became extraordinarily difficult, especially if you didn't have money. Just ask, Donald John. You know, I was a student when my name came up. Instant presto, you're 37 on the lottery. And, look, HPN, I'm talking about having close to a 4.0 average. When the military does this, Mom, Dad, when the military does this and says they're going to lower, we're going to now make it so we can accept those recruits who have a history of, get this, history of self-mutilation, bipolar disorder, depression, and drug and alcohol abuse in their history. If you had it, then they're saying, okay, I'll tell you what, we're not going to hold that against you, we'll take you. There was a time when it was quite the contrary now. when it was after 9/11, let me just tell you, they didn't have a shortage then. So now, after being in Afghanistan, being in Iraq, and maybe even because we've got Donald John in the White House, in my view, the United States Army is now saying, because we can get the history of you guys, that bipolar thing, that self-mutilation thing is not nearly as important as what it used to be to us. We could take this chance with you. What this means to me is that last Veterans Day, by the time we get to another Veterans Day, and hopefully we won't have done anything around Jong-un and North Korea, don't pretend like we can't have a draft now. I'm just saying. Pretty serious stuff. That combined with the fact that we've got a president here. We've got a president who is on foreign soil. Bro, the man is not only on foreign soil. Look, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a guy sitting in a country that cost these United States 58,000 troops, over 58,000 men killed during Vietnam. Well over, actually it's about 62. It was 58,000 in 1968. So sitting there in the Mekong Delta, this guy insults other military men by suggesting that Vladimir Putin is right and his own intelligence is wrong. Well, that's not unusual. Or he believes, you do understand that the communist Soviet Union supported the Viet Cong, a communist country, to this day. Have them said that we morphed, though we do some democratic things, much like Russia. Socio-communistic. I don't know what is happening with Barry Goldwater and Ronald Reagan's Republican Party, but this ain't it. This is not it. No one in their right mind, even Ronald Reagan with Gorbachev, would say, trust but verify, this guy, our guy. I believe him. Vladimir Putin said it, and so let it be written, so let it be done. I believe him. He's, every time he sees me, he says he didn't do that. He didn't invade it. He didn't.
He said he didn't meddle. He said he didn't meddle. I asked him again. You can only ask so many times.
It's incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what this sounds. That's why I say this guy's a Manchurian president. And I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm saying because I'm really concerned. He was all giddy. Did you see him bouncing down the steps with Vladimir Putin like he was a little Humpty Dumpty?
So happy.
Leaning over, whispering at Vladimir. Was he talking? I didn't even see an interpreter.
No interpreter.
I wonder whether he speaks fluent Russian.
Or if
They're leaning over, cheering. Vladimir Putin patting him on his little behind, big behind.
matching shirt.
Well, I mean, that's what they do there. You know, there's a customary thing that they do there.
Matching shirt.
It's not funny, bro. This is serious. It's serious. He came out on communistic soil, dampened with the blood of 62,000 Americans, and criticized other Americans. Criticized. In other words, even calling out the former president. Who does that? And what happened to the standards? You remember the Dixie Chicks being ostracized by iHeart, which was Clear Channel Radio? Oh, we won't play them anymore because they criticized the president out of the country. Here you have a president who's criticizing his guys. This is incredible. I have grave concerns. Donald John says this. I think that he's very, very strong in the fact that he didn't do it, says John. He's talking about Putin. He's very, very strong. He says, every time he sees me, he says, I didn't do that. And I really believe that when he tells me that, he means it. But he says, I didn't do that. I think he's very insulted by it, which is not a good thing for our country. Which country? America or Russia? There's something odd here. Even if you are a Donald John supporter, if you're, if you've drank the Orange Julius, even if you've done that, you got to ask yourself, why? Why is this guy? Look, there's plenty of evidence to show this. Even with his appointees to the NSA and the CIA have come out and confirmed this. And it took this guy grudgingly hours before he got on the plane, Air Force One, and finally said, I'm with our agencies, especially as currently constituted with their leadership. There. You made me say it, so I said it. I feel better now. But while there, here he is on his way to the Dorte, or the pin in the Philippines. Before he got there, on foreign soil, he said this about the former intelligence heads, Brenner. You have that there? You have. Okay, you have them talking about it. Okay, very good. So you don't have Donald John saying it.
No, the sound from Air Force One is not yet.
So you don't have that. All right. However, Brennan was on the shows over the weekend, and he took the president to task. Go ahead and play 13.
I think Mr. Trump knows that the intelligence agencies, specifically CIA, NSA, and FBI, the ones that really have responsibility for counterintelligence and looking at what Russia does, it's very clear that the Russians interfered in the election, and it's still puzzling as to why Mr. Trump does not acknowledge that and embrace it, and also push back hard against Mr. Putin. The Russian threat to our democracy and our democratic foundations is real, and I think his continuing to not say very clearly and strongly that this is a national security problem, and to say to Mr. Putin, we know you did it, you'd have to stop it, because there are going to be consequences if you don't.
Yeah, he said he doesn't know why. I'll tell you why. Because I'm telling you, Donald John is the Manchurian president. He doesn't have to be Russian. But as you see this guy munching it up with Vladimir Putin, someone's speaking English. It's either Donald John or it's Vladimir, and there's been some suggestion that Vladimir Putin does speak some English. But typically he doesn't. They're chumming it up here. They're old buds. And I'm going to tell you something. When you hear him, when you hear Vladimir Putin or you see them, it brings new questions. See, I knew that he was going to speak. There was some thought, well, he's not going to, I don't know if schedule is going to permit. That's bull crap. He was going to talk to his boss. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. I knew it.
I have no relationship with Putin.
I do have a relationship with him.
I have no relationship with him. He has said nice things about me over the years. I remember years ago, he said something many years ago. He said very nice things about me, but I have no relationship with him.
When I went to Russia with the Miss Universe pageant, he contacted me and was so nice.
I have no relationship with Putin. I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him.
I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer.
I have never spoken to him on the phone, no.
Now, you've got to ask yourself, why would he lie? People lie to those they fear. My dad always told me. And I think in this case, I think there's some fear coming from Donald John. And it may go back to the dossier, but I think more than anything else, his greatest fear is that he is not going to become the financial mogul he'd like to be, the international money guy. I do, folks. With all that's happening now, from Ross, the Secretary of Commerce, to all of the oligarchs involved, let me tell you, when you're following the money from the Grand Cayman all the way to Cyprus, there's just too many connections here, bro. There's just too many connections here. Now, I mean, let's say you've got I always do this with drugs. You got a drug kingpin, right? So he's living somewhere, let's say, we're off of Highland Village you know, out near Meadowbrook there in Jackson. You know, he's got a nice house there. But it's not a big house, but it's an older house. But he's... And you start seeing people hanging out, you know, 2, 3 in the morning. Yeah, and then some folks coming in with white tees on. You know. You know. And then you periodically will see his, I don't know, Porsche or Bentley. You know,
Exactly.
rolling up in the neighborhood very quickly and then moving on. In other words, folks, you know, and what gets me about this is that you Trumpsters, you Trumpettes, don't you know that everything the Russians are doing is surveilled, and it should be? I don't care if it was with President Barack Obama. The idea that you would question the Central Intelligence Agency because they were monitoring Russians who happened to be with Jared Kushner or anybody else in the entourage, any other thousands in the Trump's entourage, question them as opposed, well, no, why are they monitoring the president? Because he's with the Russians. How stupid can you be? I mean, common sense is not coming with these folks. They will do anything and feel that this is political. It's not, for me. Not at all.
Well, they've been duped.
I want to play number 16. Brennan saying that Donald John has been played. Now, you know, that's a street way of putting it.
Well, I think Mr. Putin is very clever in terms of playing to Mr. Trump's interest in being flattered. And also, I think Mr. Trump is, for whatever reason, either intimidated by Mr. Putin, afraid of what he could do or what might come out as a result of these investigations. So it's very worrisome, and I think it sends a worrisome, very disturbing signal to our allies and partners who are concerned about Russian interference in their democratic processes as well. So it's either naivete, ignorance, or fear in terms of what Mr. Trump is doing vis-a-vis the Russians.
See, this is what I don't understand about them. The options that he gave. Naivete, naivete.
Fear or ignorance.
Fear or ignorance.
Yeah.
Why can't it be just part of the plan, Brennan? I don't know, what is it with you Americans? If he was an African-American, I guarantee you would think he'd be a double agent.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? In other words, it's just beyond we good God-fearing Americans to say this guy with the bouffant haircut cannot simply be the guy who has already cut a deal long before he ran. If I run, I could see it. If I win this thing, Vladimir, here's the deal. He has been saying he can do a deal with Russia. What deal? Will someone tell me what deal? What is the deal? And look, folks, I want peace in the world, no doubt about that. And it's, if we're able to develop an ally in the way of Russia, I really don't have a problem with that. But you got to trust and verify. This is the same guy who only recently, since Donald John took office in January, said he has put a nuclear warhead on a cruise missile. A cruise missile that can go under radar. And our guy, Mad Dog Mattis, came forward to criticize Vladimir Putin and said that that is against the treaty. To which Vladimir Putin said to him emphatically, you're just a lie. That's not true. I'm going to do it. And the president didn't even back up Mattis.
No, he's got to back up his leader.
I'm very gravely concerned here. I'm very gravely concerned. This is not politics for me. I mean, under any other ordinary circumstances, anyone sitting on the outside looking at this, it's read like a Ludlum novel or something. You're sitting here, look, if you guys are in law enforcement and you're looking at this, can you just dispel what I'm saying as being a bit suspicious? You know, the international finance consortium, going all around the world, just basically trying to follow the money of the multi-billionaires and millionaires, and trust me on this, Donald John is creating an army of them. And look, I think it's for cause and not because, is my point. The question is why? What is the angle here? And look, I've given you some potential. It's not about invading America, taking it over, and sooner or later we're going to be eating porridge or what is it, drinking vodka, stolichnaya.
Borscht.
That's not it. It is about minimizing our influences in the world and de-uniting the United States. I don't think it's out of the question. That's exactly what we did with the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
And this downplaying of the seriousness is what we're getting.
And it did it by way of economics, ladies and gentlemen. It did. So he's there with the Dorte. Some suggested 600 to 800 folks killed, many of them drug dealers. The same guy, he's sitting there chumming it up with the same guy who referred to President Barack Obama, well, told him to go to hell. Do you hear that?
Instead of helping us, ang unang tumira itong State Department. So, you can go to hell. Mr. Obama, you can go to hell.
Huh. He called Obama's mama a whore?
Well, he called him a son of a whore, so that would.
You must be respectful. Do not just throw away questions and statements. Putang ina mumurahin kita dyan sa forum na. Nobody has the right to lecture on me.
From the Filipino, called him son of a whore.
Do not do it.
Huh.
Sang for Trump.
Yeah, he did sing.
Did a duet.
I mean, in other words, ladies and gentlemen, you just don't do this on foreign soil. You just, at some point, you've got to ask yourself, why would you do this? You don't have an answer for that. When we come back, you're going to hear from Judge Moore. I'm going to let you decide, guilt or innocence, as to whether or not he indulged with whether he's a pedophile. 2 cents, hang tight. We'll get your 2 cents when we come back.
It's about that time to get away. Make your reservations.